Hello and welcome to the latest episode of The Hex with John Arnold, Arman Kafai, Daniel Robertson. Give us a thumbs up, give us the like, the subscribe, 5-star rating if you are listening on podcast. We would appreciate it quite a bit. Guys, MLS opening weekend happened. We watched a lot of games. Let's get into it with the 6 hottest topics in North American soccer. This is The Hex. It was quite an interesting week for Inter Miami playing in freezing temperatures in Kansas City midweek in CONCACAF Champions Cup. They got the result, but they did not get a result on Saturday at Chase Stadium in Fort Lauderdale. John, you have been a little bit skeptical of if Javier Mascherano was going to be the coach that they needed. Did this 2-2 draw against NYCFC change that thinking for you at all?
I would think that it probably shouldn't, but it actually did. And here's why. In the 2 games that Inter Miami has played, I think the idea that has won out, that actually is happening on the field, is, hey, there's no need to worry about who's in the managerial box because Lionel Messi is on the field. He basically won that CONCACAF Champions Cup match with a flick of his foot. And then he basically got a point out of that game against NYCFC, which was so conditioned by the red card, just by sheer willpower as well. A little help, I guess, maybe, but overall, I don't think Mascherano looks great. Hopefully for Miami fans, he's smart enough to learn on the job. But maybe it doesn't really matter when you have Lionel Messi on the field. And a team that is deeper than last year's squad in some places. Like, it depends on where you're at, but you start to look at some of the attacking depth. If Messi goes down, obviously they're in big trouble. But that was going to be the case if Tata, if Pep, if Mascherano, or if you and I were out there, right? So I actually came away from these first 2 games saying, man, Inter Miami, not in crisis, but the margins are going to be thin for them this year.
That you nailed it. The thin margins. The margins just got a lot thinner. And you know what I was thinking, John, watching that game too, was I think they might miss Leo Campagna a lot more than any of us may realize, because that extra guy off the bench who is probably, as we saw yesterday, would start for probably half of the MLS teams. They missed him a lot, and they didn't really have. Okay, it's difficult, and they did. To be fair, they did equalize late. They did get that second goal, but they didn't have that piece that they could bring off the bench to really change the game. Like Robert Taylor, it's kind of like whatever. Kramashi, yeah, he's young. You can't really count on him. It felt like you said, the margins are going to be a lot thinner here. But then at the same time, are they even going for points in the regular season? Is that even the priority at this point? Because if they get past Sporting Kansas City tomorrow on Tuesday in Champions Cup, it's probably a pretty successful week, right?
Oh, absolutely. And then, no one loves CONCACAF more than me, but Cavalier, you like your chances if you're any MLS team against the Jamaican club. So I definitely think that, Inter Miami can sort of fake it till they make it. And I guess that's what I'm saying about Mascherano. I don't think he looks like a prepared, savvy manager right now. I don't. But he doesn't really need to be. And if he can fake it till he makes it, and what they make it to is a CONCACAF Champions Cup semifinal or final, then in some ways, then you can sort of rely on the strength of your players to carry you through. So maybe by May, June, we're thinking, oh my goodness, he really has pushed the right buttons. He really has put his players in place to succeed. He's helped develop an option off the bench, like you're saying, would be a big boost. But right now, I don't really see it. It might not matter.
His celebration kind of said a lot to me too, where granted, I don't want to I don't want to yuck his yum, as some would say, but to be jumping around, fist pumping because you got a draw against NYCFC at home, which, by the way, I think if any other team was playing at home, they're not getting 11 minutes of stoppage time. They're probably getting about half that. And if they had gotten half that, that goal wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, Arman, still mad.
Yeah. I'm a little salty about it. Arman, anything else that you would take away from Inter Miami right now? Do you think they have kind of reason for worry at all?
Not really. We're only what 2 games into the season, right? They're clearly trying to implement kind of almost the same style, not the same style, but very, very close to the style they used under Tata. And look, they played down a man for quite a bit of time. And if you look at all the numbers and you look at the game, you'd feel like they're actually up a man. Minus a Jordi Alba beautiful assist to NYCFC to make it 2-1. You can kind of look at that and kind of be like, okay, it was a fine performance, and to be down a man for that time, to produce the highest expected goal difference in MLS for that week, I don't think there's any issues, to be honest with you.
I don't agree with that.
I don't think there's any issues, to be honest with you.
I don't agree with that, though, because if you look at NYCFC's team out there, the team they put out on Saturday, that's a bottom 5 MLS team of the talent that they put out there.
Yeah, if you're down a man, it's still gonna be you're still at a disadvantage. Like, that's like if you go through like the thing, that's being down a man's worth like 0.8, almost a goal in an expected goal number. That's going to be a lot difficult to come back from regardless. And for them to get the result, after playing midweek in absolute frigid conditions, I think it's fine. Come back to me in 2-3 weeks if we see strings of draws, especially against Houston, who I'm not really high on, especially after their performance and their departures they've had. If in 2-3 weeks we're talking about, okay, 3 straight draws or something like that, then I think I'd be a little bit worried, because even with CCC play, I think they shouldn't have the quality to get results, within the week in MLS. So for me, I'm not worried just yet. But again, like, my kind of philosophy through this is I'm kind of watching for styles, patterns, etc. through the first week. And for me, nothing to me was, oh dear, except Thomas Avalos kind of just being a dumb player. So that was my big takeaway from it, scoring and then getting sent off. I mean, what are you doing, dude?
Well, Arman, you mentioned one of the losers of the weekend, Aviles, but we're going to look at winners every single week of the MLS season. We're going to give our winners from the weekend, and I will kick us off here for week one. And my big winner from the weekend, guys, it's MLS GMs. If you are an MLS GM, you're having to walk through the office every day when your team loses, maybe the team employees, the ticket people, the marketing, they're kind of looking at you with the side eye. Well, today you're walking around, if you're an MLS GM of a team that won this weekend, with your chest pumped out a little bit, because you look at the players who scored or had big impacts. Jeremy Ebobisse, game winner in LAFC. Latte Lath in Atlanta. Osman Bukhari, I know he was signed last summer, but he was, very good player for Austin. Jaden Nelson, they signed him in the offseason. He has 3 assists. Kevin Denke, he scores. Just about every marquee signing of an MLS team came to play this weekend, and makes you feel like, oh, early returns are good for my player. So that's what I'm thinking. If I'm a big winner of the weekend, if you have that GM next to your name, you're probably feeling pretty good. Arman, where are you going?
I'm going where playing out of the back goes wrong. Big winner for people who want to play direct soccer. I think
Twitter account.
Yeah, they're eating right now. They can just clip up like half the MLS goals this week. I think there was 10 examples, including Jordi Alba one.
Impression analytics are
they're through the roof. They might need to contact you for some information there on how to get them bigger. But no, it seemed like a lot of teams were trying, different styles. We saw in Chicago with Greg Berhalter, they're going to try to play a certain style of play that resulted in 2 goals basically being given to the Columbus Crew. We saw it in Houston where Ethan Barlow passed to Petar Musa, which was a great finish from Musa, but a beautiful pass from Ethan Barlow. Jordi Alba threw ball for NYCFC. We saw it. We saw it almost in every game. It was pretty crazy to see. And look, I mean, with the preseason, with teams trying different styles, with MLS has actually become a little bit of an indirect league. Recently, a lot of teams are trying to play these kind of build out of the back, kind of less direct styles of play, but sometimes it doesn't work. I mean, we saw in the San Diego LA game, guys, like, again, just beautiful assist.
What do you chalk that up to, though? Like, because I don't remember. I mean, we've been watching MLS for a long time. Is this just a fluke? Because I don't remember. If anything, it's typically, as I just anecdotally, it's the other way around, where like teams struggle to score early in the season. Like, was this just an aberration?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a mix of things. Definitely like a lot of roster turnover and a lot of again. You kind of saw it when Nancy's first year, Columbus was making a ton of mistakes in the back. And when these styles are coming into play, and players are not familiar with them, it's going to happen. It's bound to happen.
That's why I think sometimes national team fans get really frustrated when a manager is trying to put that style into place and they don't get the results at the first couple of weeks, because it's not easy to just flip a switch and have those connections with guys, especially when the other team is trying to get the ball. My winner, how about Crew attackers in number 1, Diego Rossi? Now, one thing they were able to do was play a Chicago Fire back line who did gift them some goals. But I think we spent a lot of the last couple of weeks doubting the Crew attack. Cucho Hernandez is gone. What are they going to do? Oh, well, Russell Rowe, can he really score? Diego Rossi, well, is he still going to be able to do it in MLS? They have to sign a 9. They have to sign a 9. Probably still need to sign a 9, but maybe this team isn't so bad at scoring and putting in the back of the net. We definitely need a bigger sample size, but you talk, Daniel, about someone having their chest pumped out. Maybe Sital's feeling okay, and I think some of the crew attackers are as well. It's tough to kind of say the next kind of stretch for them because they're going to have CONCACAF Champions Cup, maybe against LAFC, maybe against Colorado Rapids. But they got a lot of teams in their conference as well in the domestic schedule. So I'm fascinated to watch kind of how the next couple of weeks unfold because I think a lot of people left this team for dead and they did a little bit of the Undertaker, popping out of the coffin move this week.
Yeah, their test is coming up, right? For Columbus. I mean, they
for sure
the first one, but their test is coming up, and we'll get into it in a little bit and see who they're going to play here in about a week in Champions Cup time. But yeah, I definitely felt the same way. I mean, I was very frustrated based on my bet MLS side of things, where I had the Columbus Crew team total under 1.5, and to see them basically that did not
get to 3 goals, yeah.
Yeah,
I'd say the own goal and then the two built.
One of them I wouldn't say was a gift; it was more of a fluke, where it was like a clearance that kind of like it was more of a fluke than a gift. I mean, we saw some gifts this weekend, but yeah,
10 gifts apparently.
Yeah, I was very frustrated by that. All right, so a tried and true aspect of 1 week of MLS is that a lot of people are going to overreact to results that come from the first week. Remember, guys, when Toronto FC last year had 3 shutouts to start the season? And I'm pretty sure some people were anointing them that it's kind of like the University of Texas. Is Toronto FC back? They were indeed not back. They were not back at all. So we're going to look at 3 teams that had good results in week 1. Here's what we're going to do, guys. We are going to go to the VAR, and we're going to say, is this a good goal? Or do we need to hit the VAR and review this team a little bit more before we declare them good? So, Arman, you're going to kick us off here. We got together yesterday and watched San Diego FC go into Dignity Health Sports Park. They were raising the banner, and that was about the only thing that the Galaxy had to cheer. San Diego, though, is this a team to be reckoned with? Is this someone that's we've got a good goal here? Or do we need to check the VAR? And you need to do the hand thing.
Oh, I have to do the hand thing?
If we need to check the VAR.
If we need to check them. Look,
I'll narrate for podcasters. Okay, he's not doing it. He's not doing it.
Okay. He's doing it, folks.
He's doing it.
I'm doing the VAR. Look, we're gonna, I think, talk a little bit more about the Galaxy in a bit. But with San Diego, again, they were gifted a goal, and when you're gifted a goal, that changes. Although I do like the way that they were. When you're gifted a goal and you're chasing, it changes things. But look, with San Diego, I'm impressed by a few things that I think we just need to see a little bit more of. I like the way that they were able to attack the Galaxy in transition. I mean, we saw, and sure, it was kind of late on the match as well. But Tomas Angel had 2 moments that were like, one was pretty dumb,
buddy.
And then we were laughing so hard about it because it was like, go in a corner, you're tired. And there was a brilliant pass for their second goal. So overall, like, I think San Diego showed really good moments in possession. They showed really good moments kind of fighting against the Galaxy, who were in possession trying to score through Gabriel Peck quite a bit. I like what I saw, but I just want to see a little bit more of it because I don't want to fall into the whole St. Louis City trap that we fell into like in 2023, where they were just they had some crazy results go their way, then get absolutely smoked in the first round of the playoffs, and then go downhill from there. But for me, with Mikey Varas, I mean, for a first game against the MLS Cup champions, who aren't really the same team as they were last year, I think it's a great result. It's a fantastic result. But I think we just need to check the monitor a couple more times.
He did the signal again, podcast listeners.
We need to check the monitor a couple more times before we anoint them as for real.
Trying to see who San Diego has next weekend, by the way.
St. Louis City.
St. Louis
City.
Okay. All right. Well, that'll definitely be a little bit more of a test for
Dude,
them.
I want to review that pitch because that's what I'm worried about. That pitch looked terrible at the end of last season, and now they're adding another team playing there full time. Hopefully, everything looks good horticulture-wise.
All right, we're becoming a horticulture pod. Well, I have got San Jose Earthquakes this week. They got a 4-0 win over Real Salt Lake on Saturday night in the first game of the Bruce Arena era. And guys, I'm pointing to the spot. It's a good goal. The San Jose Earthquakes are going to be a force to be reckoned with in the Western Conference this year. I'm not sure that they have the top-end talent to compete in the playoff scenario, But, John, you alluded to this a little bit in your predictions before the season. I think you said they were going to be top 5, maybe top 3 even.
I definitely said top 5. Let's pretend I didn't say the other thing.
Well, I'm feeling good about them making top 5 because granted, they were playing a Real Salt Lake team that was coming from the match at Herediano in Costa Rica. And of course, they have another one this week. So you weren't seeing the best that RSL necessarily has to offer. But at the same time, I feel like the floor has been raised for San Jose so much right now. They were so composed. They didn't make mistakes at the back. I watched a lot of this game. This was one of my predictions, so had a little bit of investment on the line. And I just couldn't have been more pleased with what I saw from San Jose because you look at the Bruce Arena coach teams, and they just simply don't lose that much. And in MLS, if you don't lose that much, you're going to make the playoffs. And as we look at the teams that maybe made the playoffs last year that aren't going to make the playoffs this year, boy, if I'm in one of those 6, 7, 8 teams, a team like the Galaxy that we may think might be down there, San Jose is going to be one of those teams that I think does make the playoffs this year. I feel very confident in saying that. And they've got a very intriguing match on Saturday going to Sporting Kansas City, a team playing at Inter Miami or this week that'll kind of show, hey, was that a mirage for San Jose? But right now, I'm pointing to the spot. I'm saying good goal. We do not need to check the monitor. John, another blowout on Sunday. This one was a big shock to me personally. I did not see this coming. Early red card doesn't hurt. But the Whitecaps, they've got a big match against Saprissa, but you're going to the monitor. They beat Portland. Was it 4-0 final?
4-1.
4-1.
4-1.
I'm doing the signal. I think we need to take another look here. When you look at this Whitecaps team, obviously we have a better sample size than a lot of teams because they did play in CONCACAF Champions Cup, losing to Saprissa, a Saprissa team that says, you know what, you remember Kendall Waston from the Whitecaps? You remember Kendall Waston from our team? He's a forward now. And he is. Which is difficult to deal with because he's a big dude, a little mobile more than you might expect. But you can't stop Kendall Waston-led attack from scoring goals. I'm going to take at least one more look at you. And I think the red card just super conditioned this game against the Portland Timbers team that already probably needed more time together, that already looked pretty discombobulated. If the red card is worth whatever 0.8 XG that Arman said it was worth, still we see the Whitecaps end up with 2.81 to Portland's 0.73. And a lot of it, was down to a masterclass from Jaden Nelson. But I do think this is also one of those situations where he could do it again. He could have more games like this, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is kind of like, when a baseball player comes in and they're like, we just didn't know how to pitch him. Now that teams have seen Jaden Nelson put this, goal hat trick of assists together, I don't think that everyone's just going to let him do whatever he wants. And he's also going to be playing a team with an entire back 4 or back 5 probably for most of the year.
We will have another chance to check the VAR on that Whitecaps team this week as they will be playing the Galaxy. And we talked earlier about how none of us are really too worried about Inter Miami, but let's look at the defending champs now and their 2-0 loss to San Diego. And I think that it wasn't exactly just the loss itself. I think that was a relatively predictable result in some ways. They were always going to struggle as a team missing key pieces. But Arman, is this a panic point for the Galaxy? You wouldn't say that they would miss the playoffs in your bold predictions, but you did say they were going to finish in that 8-9 seed. If you're a Galaxy fan, are you hitting the panic button right now?
I mean, you should have hit the panic button like a long time ago. With Ricky Puig tearing his ACL and being out for however long it's going to be, that's already your panic point. He is the most heliocentric player. He's the highest touch percentages in MLS history, of a team by one player is through Ricky Puig. Yeah. That's insane. How do you replace that? They seem like they tried to replace it through Edwin Cerrillo. I like Edwin Cerrillo. I think his role is better as a guy who cleans up the mess and feeds a ball distributor than a guy who is the ball distributor. They try to find Gabriel Peck in moments. He didn't look that threatening until really late on when the Galaxy were really trying to push it onto San Diego SC. But overall, I'm not that high on the Galaxy, guys. Again, you don't have Paintsville for the first start of the year. You don't have Ricky Puig. Again, how are you going to replace Ricky Puig? You lost Mark Delgado. You lost Gaston Brugman, who was your, again, MLS Cup MVP. We've talked about this team so much and how they've gone through salary cap issues, how they've lost players. And it seems like there's still an issue. They just bought out Sean Davis. and a player that, like, maybe could have been useful in this moment. They seemingly it looked a little discombobulated. It may it's gonna take a little bit while to get together, but overall it looked really shaky. They benched McCarthy or Mikovic, who
What was the
distribute.
deal with that?
I don't understand. He couldn't distribute his feet in a Greg Vanny system that is very possession oriented. Marco Royce, where was he in the game? I didn't see him in the game. Where was he? Where's Waldo? They couldn't get him the ball. So for me, I think this panic point should have been pressed a long time ago. And I was seeing predictions of Galaxy a top 3 team. I had them personally at like 6. I'm kind of feel like might be an overreaction, but I feel like I'm regretting even putting them at 6.
It's a huge overreaction from me as well to say like, oh, this team just didn't look like they were up to it. But we're talking about teams that need more time together, teams that need to formulate their idea, but they're playing a San Diego team that never played together ever. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces missing for the Galaxy, but there's still some of that structure that won MLS Cup, and yet they just didn't look at all comfortable. And I think it's one thing to say, yeah, like Ricky was so important, and obviously they'll be much better when Paintsill gets back. I'm not actually as worried about the attack as I am as what I saw out of the defense, which wasn't their strength last year. But if it takes as much of a step back as it looks like it did in week 1 all season, they're going to have a lot of trouble putting up crooked numbers that overcome the issues that they have there. Garces looked totally lost. Yeah, he got kind of hosed on that pass. That wasn't on him, but it was from the goalkeeper, who's also part of this defensive unit. Yoshida Yamane, neither I thought had a very good night either. And it just... yeah, a tough assignment maybe because it's Chucky Lozano in his MLS debut, but it's also a team that had never played together in a real life game, and they just looked so much more fluid, and that's not a great comparison that you want to draw.
Here's what has me hitting the panic button if I'm a Galaxy fan right now, and Arman, you alluded to a little bit, is Marco Royce. Okay, let me ask you this from an analytics perspective. What are the numbers you would typically like to see out of Marco Royce? What are you looking for him to produce in that offense, apart from goals and assists, of course? But what are the types of stats that you were looking for, Arman? Because I want to share a few things with you.
Yeah, so I'm looking for key passes, like how many passes actually lead to shot. I'm looking for final third entries, like are you actually entering the final third? I'm looking for where you're also receiving the ball too, right? We're going to talk about another player in a bit, but where you're receiving the ball in those advanced moments. Where you're receiving those ball in those advanced moments, your expected assists as well. Like, are you producing actual chances, or actual moments? Are you maybe getting involved in the goal score, like the goal creation side? Maybe it's not expected goal side, but maybe it's the expected assists, expected assisted goals, etc. Like, you're supposed to be that connector that finds Peck, that finds these guys. If you can't find them, then you're kind of invisible.
He had the fewest completed passes of any starter outside of Christian Ramirez. He had 1 progressive pass in the game, and a progressive pass goes at least 10 yards, right? He had 1. That has me hitting the panic button if I am a Galaxy fan. Carries, which I know it's not exactly his game to like take the ball and take it down the field, but in this offense without Ricky Puig, that is what they need from him, because they're not going to get that from Edwin Cerrillo on a very regular basis. He had the fewest carries of anyone on the pitch. That can't happen for them. Like, if Marco Royce isn't involved, where are your goals coming from? That has me hitting the panic button right now if I'm a Galaxy fan. At the end of the day, though, like we said, they did raise a banner on Sunday night, so I don't think they worry too much. We are recording this on Monday afternoon, and guys, we are about 24 hours away from 2 really big CONCACAF Champions Cup games with lots on the line, and 4 MLS teams who are losing heading into their second leg. John, we watched a lot of CONCACAF Champions Cup last week. Which teams that are losing or tied do you think are in the best spot right now to turn it around? Tomorrow night we would have LA trailing 2-1 to Colorado and Sporting Kansas City trailing 1-0. I don't think you're going to say Sporting, but the other one might have a chance.
You know what? I actually think that Real Salt Lake, like, they didn't play amazing, but I expected more from Herediano. As you heard last week on this podcast, on the Hex, I felt like they were a big spoiler team. And look, they still absolutely could spoil. They still could get through. But if you're Real Salt Lake, I guess I would just say they're in the best position for what they've done. You look at the Sounders, they didn't play amazing, but like they got results. Everything's fine. Real Salt Lake has played really poorly in both games, and yet here they are, 1 goal and a clean sheet away from the next round of the CONCACAF Champions Cup. So I think that at home with some more players back after they missed the first leg, I think that they're going to be a team that is going to get past Herediano, and they're sitting pretty. LAFC Colorado is so interesting because that goal from LAFC to cut the deficit just changed everything, and it really just puts the tie in total balance for me. Whereas I think RSL maybe has more of an edge. I don't know. I guess that's my pick. RSL, is that a good pick? I don't know.
Arman, where are you looking?
For me, I'm looking at I'm looking at LAFC. I mean, well, also it kind of depends if they start Giroud or not. Wasn't really sold on Giroud at all. I thought
hold on, if they start Giroud, you will not pick them.
Yeah, is that good or bad?
I will not pick them because I think Giroud has been pretty rough. I think if you're fully healthy, their best front three is Boanga, Jabo, and David Martinez, who I think we saw had a pretty strong performance against Minnesota. And look, because they start, I think, Nathan Ordaz in the game against in the first leg. If you start that lineup, and obviously Colorado, I think will also have a better lineup too because they played Atencio in the game against St. Louis City as well. But I think that lineup is super dynamic, and they're obviously going to go forward, and their midfield, I love it with Delgado and Igor Jesus as well, who I thought was excellent in that first leg. They're not playing in sub-frigid conditions. I think LAFC, I think they'll end up pulling out the result out of this game, and I think they'll end up advancing to the next round. But John, in your case, when you're talking about RSL, to me, it's so hard to differentiate because we saw kind of RSL on the pitch as kind of but I mean, I have the utmost respect for Pablo Mastroeni and the way he sets up his teams. I think that's a good pick because of the way he sets up his teams, and he'll set them up fine to beat Herediano. Daniel, what are you looking forward to?
I'm honestly, it's funny because, after watching, I was so tuned up for all of the games on Tuesday and Wednesday last week. Like I was by the channel the entire time. And then Thursday night came around for Saprissa Whitecaps. And I was like,
I did not watch, respectfully. I did not watch.
I got to draw the line somewhere. But now I'm actually really fascinated by the second leg of that game because we need to see if the Whitecaps, they got the great result in Portland, like we kind of mentioned earlier. Is that going to carry over? If the Whitecaps can get an early goal, I mean, on paper, they are a much better team than Saprissa, I think. And so they should get these results. And it will be funny to see if Waston going back to his old stomping grounds in Vancouver can get a result there. So that's what I'm really fascinated by, I think. But didn't we have this discussion like a few weeks ago about the Liga MX teams in CONCACAF Champions Cup? And it was like, they didn't get the results in the first leg. And then what happened? It is all Mexican flags going down.
But that's the difference, I think, between what MLS did in the first round of this competition and what Liga MX close did is that MLS, there's far fewer MLS teams that are nervous. Cincinnati, look, Pat Noonan said the right things after the Motagua match. He's like, the series is still open. No, it's not. It's 4-1, and you're going to play your home leg. We might be able to start in the midfield and still get a result.
Stop the cap.
Yeah. And that's not, not again, like I like watching Motagua. Like I'm not taking anything away from them. They're a good team, but like you got it in the bag because of the work you did in the first round. And Seattle can say the same thing. I just think that MLS teams really put themselves in a better place. Even RSL, I think, is in a good spot. Not because of being impressive in the first round, because of not blowing it and making mistakes in the first round. And that's the difference between those teams and Chivas, Pumas, and Tigres in the first round.
To wrap it up this week, one of us took a trip to watch a game in the first round of the MLS season. And we want to talk to you about it, Arman, as you are just shaking.
Whenever they showed the game, like the pre-match on MLS 360, I audibly said, "Oh no!" And my wife said, "What's wrong?" She thought there was like a problem, and I just like, "No, Arman is sitting out in that weather. I'm watching on TV right now."
And I texted. I didn't want to be a dick, but I was like, I texted him too as I was sitting in my warm place on the couch. And as John, I know you were too. The early MLS 360 games were great. Amazing.
It was perfect.
Amazing entertainment. MLS is back. And I was texting Arman. I was like, man, I'm not going to try to be a jerk here, but I really don't envy you right now. Because Arman, what were you doing on Saturday night?
I was freezing my ass off and being poured. Well, we were covered under a roof, but occasionally getting poured on as I watched a mid-off between the Houston Dynamo and FC Dallas. So it was, for those who haven't been to Houston, which I feel like is a decent chunk of our listeners, Maybe, I don't know. Like we'll
You got to skew towards Dallas.
We'll send a survey. We'll send a survey.
yeah, we'll do a geo search, I guess, or whatever it is. But like I don't know. It seems like this Dynamo, the conditions for the game were terrible. Like if people are gonna sit there and be like, Dynamo fans don't show up for their games. The only reason why I showed up is my buddy bought my ticket. I wouldn't have been there if I it was like we'll drive out to Houston because I wouldn't have been there regardless. The conditions were terrible. If you're in the lower levels, you were just getting rained on the entire time. It was cold. The football was okay. It was whatever, but like, I mean, overall, it was a fun experience outside the game.
What is the Shell? Because I haven't been to Shell Energy Stadium in quite a few years. Actually, I think the last time I was there was the last time FC Dallas won, I believe in 2016 at that stadium. What is the experience like now? Has it built up like around the stadium or?
Yeah, there's like a lot of so Brian Ching has a bar outside the stadium called Pitch 25. It's been there. It's actually a really great bar. There's a lot of like places you can go like pregame around the stadium or go postgame as well too. Like they've done a good job around the stadium and whatnot.
They're totally renovating it, right? I heard from Dynamo fan Tony that they're like totally changing the area between the stadium and the interstate, and it might not be for the better for like walkability and pregame. So I don't know if you guys chatted about that at all, but it is a good vibe like before a game. It's a strange one to me, Arman, because I think like the weather probably just screwed any chance they had it, like a great atmosphere, but it is like a really good location, easy to access on public transit.
It's right next to
for whatever reasons, people haven't consistently showed up at the stadium and filled it for a lot of these games, which is a shame.
No, exactly. I mean, and it was. I mean, like I said, they try to do a good job. Like again, I've been that stadium where it's been super loud. I was right there for Ache's debut, that crazy 2-2 draw when I was working with Dallas. And I mean, the atmosphere was really crazy, really fun, but they can't really seem to get the draw that they normally do. But this one, I can't really blame them. I know I was reading online, some people were like, haha, Dynamo fans not showing up, haha. It's like, dude, this weather is terrible. I wouldn't show up either. So, I mean, when it comes to the game.
You did.
Yeah, I did.
From Dallas.
Unfortunately. Although for the game, I think I put on my back heel thing that I have Houston making the playoffs. I regret that quite a bit. Like, genuinely regret that.
Just one game, but?
Just one game, but it doesn't look great. The sale of Mikael was really rough. Jack McGlynn looked excellent for the Dynamo, but it seemed like there's missing something there. Ibrahim Alihu had a really rough outing, like, across multiple avenues. And for Dallas, you kind of start to see the ideas of what Eric Quill wants to do. They kind of had two gifts. If you kind of look through the Andrew Tarbell running and Warren Barton yelling "Oh no" as he's running 40 yards out, and then before that the Bartlow back pass to Moose. It was really I didn't see the highlights. I was at the game, but I burst out laughing when I saw it because it goes "Oh no," and then Anderson Julio just dinks it by him and scores. But you can see kind of the ideas that what FC Dallas want to do, but they could not get the ball to Lucho Acosta because of just the midfield. They couldn't progress the ball to him, and Petter Musa was their 8. If you look at the advanced positioning, he dropped so deep to try to receive the ball. He was almost in line where Sebastian Lletget was or Ramiro was, and that's a problem that's not that needs to be fixed really quickly because we've kind of seen this through FC Dallas, through players like Andres Rigarte, through Jesus Ferreira at times, where these guys will drop so deep to get the ball. It's like, why? Like, be patient through the build. But, I mean, there was, I think, you could see a definite style of, like, play by Eric Will saying, hey, we want to be more direct. We want to be more forward-thinking. And there's obviously going to take time to go through that. But I think they're kind of stuck in a little bit of two minds where they want to have a little bit of the ball and also be super, like, a lot direct. I kind of just wish they went full on Atlanta. I mean, you all saw the Atlanta-Montreal game, and they just had two guys kind of back, picking up the balls, playing them forward, Almiron drifting into space. Obviously, it's easier when you spend $50 million on your team than what FC Dallas spent $20 million on their team. Like, it's not like, I mean, there's $30 million difference, but it's not like it's light years of difference. So, I know Johnny went off mute. I know you wanted to, I think, add something to the.
I just wanted to hear
reference.
Yeah, Andres Acarte. I popped for that. He's still going in Colombia, and yes, he did drop incredibly deep He was supposed to be the 10, and he would be playing right back. And
I guess
just be
Maxi
like,
Urruti is a good
why?
example too.
Well, but like Arruti is like a good example of a player who like you didn't necessarily mind if he did that because he was doing so much defensive work, whereas Musa I think was more like starvation for the ball rather than he's leading the press. I think it's a relatively easy change. I'm just not convinced that the midfield is where it needs to be for them as far as getting the ball to the playmaker. But the fact that Lucho Costa there, talk about kind of like prediction remorse. I had to submit some stuff for one of the outlets I did a preview for before the Acosta move, and I just was very down on FC Dallas. And now all of a sudden, I'm like, I still don't think they're going to be a top 5 team, but they should be all right. It's a good start. It's a rivalry match. I don't feel like they were able to kind of generate the stakes of a typical rivalry because it was also MLS is back, because everything else was going on. But we'll see how the momentum kind of gets going, and also. I haven't been. How messed up is Toyota Stadium? I guess we'll find out soon as well. I don't know what it looks like.
Well, and Daniel, one thing I want to say, because I know you were like with the team when like El Capitan was like super like like a big deal and stuff. I have like a come and take it flag from when you were, or come and take it scarf, I guess, from when you were.
Shout out Olivia Bristol. Yep.
It seems like the El Cap, like there was no mention of El Capitan. There was no mention of that at all throughout it. It was just like, we want Copa. Like the Dallas fans unveiled the banner, says, we want Copa Tejas and whatnot. But it seems like it's kind of been like not erased, but like
someone has to care, man. I mean, someone has to care. Like at back in the days of El Capitan, I mean, people on the marketing teams of either the Dynamo or FC Dallas would literally load it up on a trailer or somewhere and drive it down. I mean, people have to care, and I don't think anyone really cares at this point. So
yeah, but I also think that like it's just easier to hate Austin right now because they're new and flashy and loud, right? And I think like FC Dallas and Houston. Look, we all love soccer in Texas. We all love MLS in Texas. And maybe people, you guys are biased for Dallas or whatever. But I think, consistently, we've all been very fair toward Houston and think it's a great market, too. How many Tigres games have I been to down there? How many Rayados matches have I been to down there? Maybe I'll go to El Salvador's match against the Dynamo in March. It's always great crowds, but then they don't show up for the Dynamo consistently. Yes, there's a pop. Now, FC Dallas is definitely in the same boat. And you see Austin come in and these fan bases who have been so like kind of long neglected or haven't been able to organize like Austin's fans did so well and do so well. I think it's easier to hate them and say these guys are our real enemy. These guys are the real team we want to take the trophy off of. These guys are plastics. We've been here suffering since '96, or in Houston's case, a couple years later. And I think it's, in some ways, three's a crowd, right? When you add a third team to that kind of rivalry narrative, all of a sudden everyone wants to win Copa Tejas because you're not thumbing the eye of one rival, you're thumbing both eyes of two. So I think it's a little bit of a shame because I do think it was one of the best rivalries in the league. But now I think it's going to kind of rotate between which two Texas teams are actually competing. Those are the ones that are going to be the ones that have the spicier Copa Tejas matches.
And we'll have an opportunity to see if Dallas is for real this weekend, as they got to go to Colorado. So that'll be a really tough test for them against the Rapids before the home opener in a couple weeks. So that'll wrap it up for us. Enjoy the CONCACAF Champions Cup midweek, MLS next weekend, and we will be back the following week for another episode of The Hex. Thank you for listening.